those crises and those who are looking for the solutions base their entire life on La ilaha, there is no God. But we, as Muslims, we believe and we take the Shahada on its whole, on its entirety. Once we pronounce the Shahada, we are protected. We take all those crises away from us. Because we believe in Allah and we believe in His Prophet. And we believe in the essence of life, in the Shahada, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. We know as Muslims that what they call crisis in reality is a trial, a tribulation that comes from Allah. Sayyidina Ali, the fourth Caliph of Islam after the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, explained us that the life of a believer is basically divided into 2 days. One day we experience the blessing of Allah, and in that case we don't have to be arrogant. But the other day is when we go through the trial and tribulation of Allah, and in that case we have to just show patience, be patient, and we will go through this trial and tribulation. So behind that there is an understanding, one blessing, one wisdom of Allah that is beyond our own imagination. So, but if we look on now these crises, and we know that we live in very troubling times, and we, as Muslims, we believe that we can understand, why this we are experiencing this time. But which is then the solution? What's the solution for all the crises that we are experiencing? According to what I believe, the solution for all the problems we have in everywhere in the world, in America, in England, in everywhere, the only solution is Dahiratoubalondon. The day that we are celebrating today is a day of victory. If Allah says that He will grant victory upon the ummah of our beloved Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the magal11 is the proof of it. This day is the final day, the 18th Safar is the day in which the light prevails upon darkness. Is the day of Dahiratoubalondon, is the victory of Dahiratoubalondon, is the victory of Allah upon the darkness, upon all the evil that is around the world. But what's the victory of serigne? What did he achieve through his exile? What serigne says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed this exile only to make him as a mediator between us, the people of serigne, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And again, serigne says that whoever wants salvation in this world and salvation in the hereafter must seek refuge into serigne. So this is the victory of serigne, and we have to give thanks to him every day. But how serigne achieved this victory? Which weapons he used to give us these blessings, to share this blessing with us? He used only 2 weapons, which are taqwa and knowledge. Taqwa means basically the fear of Allah, or consciousness, awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, awareness that we have a creator, and this creator with knowledge is always present. Indeed, when the French accused serigne to wage a jihad against them, serigne said, yes, it's true. It's true, I'm planning. Yes, he said, indeed you are right, because I'm really combating for the countenance of the Lord. But I'm waging my jihad through knowledge and taqwa. So knowledge and taqwa are these 2 essences that are really strictly interlinked. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah says, fears Allah and He teaches you. Taqwa and knowledge, say that basically we cannot attain the real knowledge, the pure knowledge, without this fear of Allah, without this consciousness of Allah. Even serigne says that the real knowledge is the one that gives us taqwa of Allah. But from an Islamic perspective, what is knowledge? Knowledge is a reminding. It's a reminding of something that we already know. Knowledge is something that nurtures our fitra, our natural predisposition to believe in the oneness of Allah. So the real knowledge, according to Serigne Touba, is the knowledge that allows us to know our Creator, to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Seeking knowledge is an obligation upon all the Muslims, male and female likewise. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran exhorts us to ask Him to increase us in knowledge. He says, Rabbi zidni ilma, O Lord, increase me in knowledge. And also the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in many hadiths stressed the importance of seeking knowledge. The Prophet Muhammad said, for example, seek knowledge from the cradle until the grave. Or again, he say, seek knowledge even if this is to be found in China. So even if this is to be found very far away from where you are, seek knowledge. And again, the Prophet Muhammad said that Allah made easy the path to paradise to all of those who seek knowledge. And again, he said that if somebody dies in the way of seeking knowledge, the day of resurrection, the day of Qiyamah, he will be resurrected only 8 degrees far from the Anbiya, from the prophets. Serigne Touba, he lived all his life for Allah and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and according to Serigne Touba, knowledge is something that is fundamental, is very important. Serigne Touba in one of his books says, do not stay even one day without seeking knowledge and without implementing it in order to worship Allah, because knowledge vivifies the heart of who acquires it, and light his soul, and keep him or her away from loss and confusion. So this quote from Serigne Touba opens the gates of understanding of the importance of knowledge, which is the purpose of knowledge. So it's apply the knowledge we have and worship Allah, and which are the benefits of it. So it's enlighten our heart, enlighten our soul. Serigne Touba explained this in a beautiful way in the same book of Nashur. He says, knowledge nurture the heart as the rain nurture the soil that it wets. Or knowledge uproots the blindness of whom he acquires it, as the moon dissipates the darkness. And again he says, knowledge is a light through which the soul goes towards the truth. So through knowledge we can run towards the ultimate truth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, Serigne Touba says that one of the benefits, to explain the real benefit of it, is that he says, knowledge brought back to life hearts that were not able to distinguish between truth and falsehood. So we can understand that knowledge is something fundamental, is vital for all human beings. So if we go back to the initial point, to understand, from where this violence comes from, we are living in time in which corruption and bloodshed is widespread all over in Syria and the Middle East, or in America right now where they are killing, every month some black man. But where this violence comes from? So if you analyze it through the lens of Islam, we understand that violence comes from ignorance. Ignorance of God, ignorance of ourselves, ignorance of why we have been created, ignorance of the purpose of our life in here. To understand the life, the moment we are living in, we can look at one khutbah, one sermon of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, O humanity, before the hour comes, you will see wonders, vast tribulations, difficult times. Darkness will prevail, and fullness will take the forefront. Those who enjoy right will be oppressed, and those who condemn vice will be suppressed. This is how our beloved Prophet Muhammad explained our times. And again he says that leading Islam in this time will be like holding a burning charcoal on our hands. This is how difficult is living purely our religion. But even if we are going this really tough time, we have to believe that we are not alone, even 1 second of our life. Our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam consider all of us his brothers and sisters. We have the blessing of being brothers and sisters of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One day, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was crying, and one of the Sahaba asked him, "Ya Rasulallah, why are you crying? Why are you so sad?" And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, "I'm so sad, I'm crying because I miss my brothers and sisters." And the Sahaba was very shocked, was very surprised by that answer. So he asked again to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Are we not your brothers and sisters?" And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, No, you are my Sahaba, my companions. My brothers and sisters are those who will follow me even if they don't see me. So we have to believe that any second of our life we are with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We know that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is alive, he is great in a dimension we don't really understand. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that all our deeds, the good deeds, the bad deeds, before ascent to the heavens, will go. A malaika will bring to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet Muhammad will pray for us. In this right moment, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is praying for us. But if we have this connection, if we are brothers and sisters of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, we have to understand also deeply which is the message that he left us, which is the legacy of the Prophet Muhammad. And the legacy of the Prophet Muhammad is only mercy and love. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "We have sent you as a rahmah, as a mercy to all the world." This is the reality of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet Muhammad said, "I have not come but to perfect noble characters." So this is what said the Prophet Muhammad wants from us. And again, in one of his great wisdoms, our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the best among us, among you, the best among you is the one whose tongue and hand are not feared. And this, in this line, in these teachings, is where Dahiratoubalondon stands. The non-violence of Sheikh Dahiratoubalondon is not a political non-violence, is not a tactical non-violence, but the violence of Sheikh Dahiratoubalondon is deeply spiritual. The non-violence of Sheikh Dahiratoubalondon is grounded on taqwa of knowledge and submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Indeed, in one of his qasida called Al-Qalb, Sheikh Dahiratoubalondon says, "My heart is free from all sort of doubts, and certainly not Ar-Rahman." Certainly the heart of Dahiratoubalondon knows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Dahiratoubalondon was such that during his exile, the French tried to kill him in so many different ways. We cannot even, list them. There were so many. But there is one incident to explain how peaceful was Dahiratoubalondon. The French people kept one lion angry without, feeding him for a week. And after they released the lion in the room where Dahiratoubalondon was, in order, that the lion could attack him. But the lion, when saw Dahiratoubalondon and it stand before his wonderful, peaceful, amazing presence, he just sat down beside him, conquered by the beauty, by the peace, and the amazingness of Sheikh Dahiratoubalondon. And this explains us how Dahiratoubalondon was spreading, was living this non-violence and peace. Dahiratoubalondon reached we can say they achieved the dimension, that proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And indeed, in one of his qasidas says, "I have surpassed man and those who possess, to direct myself towards the Lord of man. On reaching the Lord of man, he gave me what is useful to man and preserved me from evil." So he says that I wish such a level that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me everything I want and prevent me from evil. Serigne Touba was not able to do anything good. During all his life, he didn't do anything but to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and anything but to any living things in this world. There is one episode of the life of Serigne Touba who really explains us the non-violence of Serigne Touba and also how he portrayed that. One day he was summoned in a region of the north of Senegal, in Saliou, and the governor of Saliou took him in front of a cannon. And the governor asked Sheikh Ahmad Rasoul, he asked him, do you know what is this machine? And Serigne Touba said, no, I don't know that. What it is? And the governor said, this machine is called cannon, and is such that if we put you in front of it, and after we put something inside of it, you will fall down dead. Serigne Touba replied to him, yeah, I have a machine that got the same power. And the governor said, what is that? Serigne Touba took from his pocket his pen and said, this is my power. My power is my pen, my words, and my acts. This episode deeply explains the profound non-violence, the non-violent essence of Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba. Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba is the only example of the entire humanity that was able to wage a jihad. A jihad that was physical, was intellectual, was spiritual, was a multi-dimensional jihad. And he waged the jihad on his own, alone. No human being helped him. No material things helped him. The only support of Serigne Touba was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All the life of Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba Khadim Rasoul, all of his acts, all his actions, all his deeds, all his khasai, all the jihad that Serigne Touba carried out was fueled only by one thing, by love. Love for Allah and love for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we can understand it through, by reading a small part, one extract of one Hasidah called Asiru. Serigne Touba Asiru said, he wrote this Hasidah when he was going into exile. He said, I'm walking with the virtues on my journey. The enemy thinks that I am their prisoner, but my walk is with the elected, led by the Prophet. On my journey, Allah is my only goal. The power of my journey is the attraction for the generous one for whom the granting of all my wishes is easy. I showed gratitude by my writings, my heart and my body, because he was generous and thankful. My victory, support and protection when I was with my enemy came from the magnanimous giver of all. My guide during my journey and trials was my master, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whom I serve, who saved his servitor every time. This explains us, how Serigne Touba was going to exile, and which was his goal. His goal was only Allah and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the reality, the dimension, the way of Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba. This is where Serigne Touba stood for. And Serigne Touba, we have to understand everything he did for us, to share the blessing with us, to save humanity. He reached such a level that he is able to save everybody. And he was so sincere on his journey, on his incredible exile, that in a Hasidah, when he got back from that, he wrote, I have forgiven all my enemies for the love of the one who protected me against them. I feel deep compassion for all my enemies. My heart is pure. And this is the legacy of Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba Rasoul. He went through tribal tribulation, and he didn't just move by love, and he got back with love and mercy. This is the legacy that Serigne Touba left to mankind, and this is the only reality of Islam. Islam is just based on mercy and love. And all Islam is in the hand of Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba Rasoul. So it's a message of peace. a message of non-violence, love and mercy, based on taqwa and knowledge. And I'm about to finish now, and would you like to end this speech by quoting Sheikh Magal11 Khadim Rasul, that is only reference that we have in one Hasidat called Matal Shifai. He says, وأنزل العلم مكان الدخل وأنزل الدشد مكان البخل. He says, we must bring knowledge where dwells ignorance. And by following Salim Tuba, by believing in him, and by beseeching his blessings, we can definitely do that. So we ask Allah to make him this real talib, and make us beacon of light in this time of darkness. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the blessings of Salim Tuba, grant us tawfiq. Thanks so much to everybody. As may Allah forgive me for everything wrong that the Prophet said. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina wa mawlana Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sheikh Muhammad Fadl, for this very important speech. May we benefit from it by the grace of Sheikh Muhammad Khadim Rasul, the faithful and loyal servant of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Next, Serigne Saliou will have the floor for his presentation, composed of slides, something he will present right now for another half an hour. Thanks for listening. Kon xam naa dañu jébal kàddu Sëñ Fall Sëñ Saliou mu am fi benn présentation bu muy def ci anglais ñuy sàkkuwaat ci mbooloo ñu teewlu gannaaw bi ñu dégloo Sëñ Fall.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dear brothers, sisters, and respected elders, allow me first to state my brother Lamin Bao to welcome you to the Great Month of October, which is a celebration that we do almost every year. And also to thank our brother Imam Fallou for this wonderful expose in Washington Bamba and how he is our answer to all the problems that Islam is facing actually in the world. Just to cut short, I think I will jump right to the point, because this presentation was just to give you a general overview of Senegal, how it was like before the time of the Shah, for you guys to better understand why the French did actually, just to give you an idea of why the French did actually persecute the Shah, and why, what's the reason for the Shah to just accept that, without any violence and without any protestation from him. So this presentation will be short. I think we will start with the most boring part, the history about Senegal. And after that we'll jump right to the Sheikh Ahmed Bamba's life, his timeline, and also what is his legacy? What did he want us to be? How did he want us to behave? And what was his main message about Tarbiyah and Tarbiyah? So we will now start with the geopolitical context. As most of you already know, I'm not looking to the Senegalese brothers who actually know more than me on the subject. But Senegal, during the 17th and the 18th century, was more in a state of colonization. I'm using the word French. I do not make a difference between the French and the colonial, because there is a reason, which in the end I would like to share with you guys. So the French, when they invaded Senegal back in the 17th century, the main argument was that we did not have any writing, we did not have any civilization. That's what we call in French the mandat civilisateur, meaning that actually they were coming to bring a civilization. But the thing is, what we found out from the history of Senegal is that we did have Islam as our civilization, and we did also have our own writing based on Arabic letters, which is what we call the Senegalese Ajami or Wolofon for people who knows more than that. And not only that, by that time when the French was trying to colonize the whole country and turn them into Christians and all the religion different than Islam, we actually did have Senegalese Ummah who went to Makkah and all the great Muslim places actually to bring the religion of Islam and a better understanding of Islam in Senegal. So from those, we actually divided the presentation into what we call the Islamic Jihad and also the aristocratic wars, meaning that Senegal being in a feudal system, a feudal state at that time, we did have kings, from Lajor to Albury and many other kings who actually were defending also their own lands from the invaders. So now, and after that, I think we'll go to the Khasa'is of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, his legacy, his timeline, as we just said. So let's just move on to the next slide, ladies. So as I said earlier, like we can see back in 1776, and between 1776 and 1786, we actually did have Sulaiman Ba, Abdel Kader. They were from Mali, so they actually were defending the eastern side of Senegal against the French, because the first politic of the French regime at that time, it wasn't about territorial colonization, it was more about economical colonization, because they were more concerned about Ndar, Dakar, and also Rufus, because these were the main markets where they would actually trade their goods against other countries, and that's why they did not go first with a process of actually colonizing the land of Senegal and actually destroying everything that they found over there, which was the politic of Tabaraz. So we did also have Maba Jahuba, Sheikh Ahmadou from Urimadia, who actually owned Jolof and Kayor, but he was also killed in the war of Samba Sadio back in 1875. And the reason why I also choose these guys is that what we found out is Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, they all replied, came and answered to the cause of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba in the end. Some of them did pass away before the Sheikh came into life, but their sons and everything that they actually worked for, they gave it to Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba. So why did the Sheikh, that's the question that I'm asking you, why did the Sheikh did not continue the war process that they started? Why did he just decide to go, in a peaceful way and a non-violent way? Because he had all those ex-military forces, and ex-soldiers at his disposal. Why didn't he make use of it? What did he want? And the next one that we found is Elijah Foutiou Tall, who was actually I will not use the term rebel because he's a huge Islamic, teacher, but he was actually an Islamic fighter back in Senegal. So he actually fought against the Senegal between 1797 and 1864, but in the end he was actually killed by the French. So by the end of 1890, what we found out is that all the Islamic jihad that we had at the time in Senegal, they all failed. I mean, it doesn't mean that they did not have the right way. It doesn't mean that they did not do the jihad for the cause of Allah. It's just as Allah said in the Quran, I mean, victory is His. He gives it to whom He wills. So they did fail, but it doesn't mean that their message did stop over there. That was back in 1890, and Elijah Foutiou Tall, Sheikh Ahmadou, Maba Jahuba, Sulaiman Abdel Kader, all of them who actually did live when the Sheikh came, they actually went and answered to the call of the Sheikh, although they did not stop the wars. And it brings the end to the Islamic wars, and I think we can move on to the aristocratic wars, which is more like UK back in, let's say, the 5th century, where you have different kings fighting over their own lands. And the first one that we actually have is Lajor Job. We also have Samba Laobé, Mamadou Lamine. They were the three, and Albury Ndiaye. They were the four main ones back in Senegal who were actually fighting to protect their land. Lajor, in the beginning, he was allied to the cause of the French because, they did actually serve his interests, but in the end, the French wanted to put up a rail network back in Senegal, I think it's in 1882, and he did not want that in the first time. So what he did was that he actually stopped the farming of the groundnuts back in Senegal, and also went on to do some guerrilla wars. And he as well was killed in the end by the French. And he actually, before being killed by the French, he went to Sheikh Ahmad Bamba as well. Another question, why did Sheikh Ahmad Bamba did not use his soldiers and to engage war back in 1895 with the French? He still have them. The second one was also Sambalawi, who was also killed in Tiwawan. We also have Mamadou Lamine. He was a Saninke, actually helped by Alburi as well. And even Alburi Jai, he also helped Lajor to find refuge back in Gambia. And also in Mali, he was the main supporter of Sheikh Elijah Omar Futi Tal's sons. And we also had Mater Sayar Mati. We also have Sayar Mati and also Sayar Sali as well. So what they all wanted at the end was just to have a main barrier, because the French did not start to invade the space. So they wanted to have a big space where Sharia of Islam would say, but still it would be an anti-French zone, as they called it. But as did the Islamic jihadists, they also failed as well. But their failure were more related to not having the artillery, the weapon that they needed to fight against the French. And also it wasn't organized. You know, kings being kings, they all wanted, you know, the other king to be killed so that they can have his land. But the reason, as I said earlier, for me to just choose these guys, to pick them up, I mean, there are so many more, but they all relied themselves to the cause of Sheikh Ahmad Bamba. And what we found out is in 1895, the Sheikh did not kill anyone, he did not engage in any war. And by the time that the French did come to him, he had more Taliban, more disciples than did the old French army back in Senegal. He had more money than did all the French army, but he still chose to go slowly and peacefully. So I think the main point that I want to focus is that for you guys to just get into that historic sense. I mean, why did he not fight? What did he want? Why did he not have people to plead his cause? Why did he not try even to speak nicely to the French? But every time that they called him to actually defend himself, the first thing he said was, he is only the slave of God. He doesn't answer to any other cause than the cause of God. So we'll start with the next slide, which actually is just very simple. It presents the life of the Shah. He actually came to Earth on 1855, you know, in 1886, being his father, being actually one of the Qadi of Lajor. The Sheikh also was known at that time by different kings back in Senegal. And in 1886, that's the year where he founded Touba. 1888, that's the first French intel, the first French archive that we have today about the Sheikh, which actually is telling us that at that time the Sheikh was living in a village called Chaga. It was close to Touba, but still they started, you know, to be wary of him. First, they did have intel from other defeated kings of Senegal, who actually, when the French will come and ask for their tax duties, they will eat the money and tell to the French that Sheikh Ahmad Bamba did order my people not to pay the tax. That was one thing. The second one was, the Sheikh was quite popular. I mean, all the other Islamic teachers that were there, they started to have their own disciples to actually go and relate to the case of the Sheikh. And themselves, you know, actually having got some difference and not understanding the Sheikh and what he wanted to do, they actually told to the French that, I mean, his Islam wasn't the right Islam to do, and he was actually calling a new regime to fight the French. So that being said, I think if you analyze it, in the exterior view, that's the main reason why Sheikh Ahmad Bamba was deported in 1895. What is now the interior reason? What did the Sheikh want? What was his plan? What was his program? And that we can only find it in his writing. I mean, he has. I mean, he has been, as I said, before that. Go back. Go down. Scroll down. Next slide. Next slide. There you go. Go back. Yeah. So as I said earlier, back in 1895, that's what we would call the stages of the sea exile, because I mean that's the term that the Sheikh used. So what was the main? This is a summary of the main cities that the Sheikh went to. Like we have Ndar, we have Dakar, we have inside the deportation boat, we have Conakry, Grand Bassam back in Cote d'Ivoire. We have other countries like Cap La Pêche, and Dahomey, and other countries back in Africa. But in each of these main stages, what we have to note is that the French, the reason why they put him in exile was not to give him a holiday or just give him a break or just put him away. What they wanted was things like this: people who knew Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba, people who believed Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba, just to stop believing in him, so that his message will be eradicated on the face of the earth, and everything that he has done will be actually as well eradicated. So back in 1895, the Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba saw the Prophet in Dahiratoubalondon. I mean, in Islam, we believe that people who pass away are not dead, we just do not perceive. So when you attain a certain level of purity, when you attain a certain level of maqama in God, you will be actually able to see the Prophet as we see each other. So being in that state, less than 40 years old, he was the khutbu of his period, meaning the Khalifatullah fil Ardi, the representative of God on earth, and actually the pole where like everything that everyone will do, he is the main responsible of her. And this is the maqama and the stage of many of the old Muslims who lived before the Shaykh, like Shaykh Tijani, or many of them. This is their maqam at the time. So being a khutbu, still, why did he still want to go to the exile? What did he want as well? And that's where when the Prophet came to him to decorate him of being a khutbu zaman, the first thing he told him is that he thanked him for that, but secondly, he said to him that his only wish is to be one of his Sahabatul Badr, the Ashabul Badrin. That's what he wanted for him. That's why he actually, at that time, the Prophet told him all of the main stages of the exile. The Prophet told him that it might take years and years, but he will come back safe in Senegal, and everything at that time was agreed between him and the Prophet. That's why he says meaning that the reason why he's going to exile is that the Prophet himself, meaning that the Prophet himself went to Allah and asked him for Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba to be the savior of his period. That was his plan. That was what he wanted for us. But for himself, he wanted to be a Sahabatul Badr. And the Prophet told him that this is not possible anymore. You cannot be called a Sahabatul Badr, because the reason why Abu Bakr, Omar, and all the Sahaba was Sahaba is that they gave up their life for the cause of Islam, and there was no war anymore. So how could he do it? That's when he ratified. I'm saying ratified because it was a contract of 8 years, Samanul Hijajin. Just like Sayyidina Yusuf did with Allah in the prison, just like any other Muslims did before, for him to be a Sahabatul Badr. And one of those conditions was that, as my brother Fallou said earlier, his pen would be his weapon. Instead of going to war or fighting against people, he will have to write down Hasidas, doing the Madhu Rasulullah, meaning that chanting the greatness of the Prophet ﷺ, and also which will incorporate many of the Islamic things that we do, like wird, zikrullah, hasbunallah, tasbih, hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil, and all of those things will be incorporated inside his recitals. But this is the trick. The Prophet told him that his enemies of his time, which were the French, they will do everything they can just to stop him from doing that. And if they stop him as little as 1 second from writing a qasaid at the time where he actually, sorry, my voice is a bit dead. From a time where he was actually ordered to write a qasaid, everything that he's written will be forgotten. I mean, he will not be the khutbah of his period. He will perish in this life and the hereafter. And the Shaykh, being the Shaykh, he still accepted that, although the condition was quite hard. He wasn't allowed just to walk and balance his hands. He wasn't allowed to look up the sky without an order from the Prophet. He wasn't allowed even to say something as little as that. And even later, he tell his people that when he ratified that contract, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created 2 angels. What they did was that they were just listening for the Shaykh to say the word so that he will be eradicated from the order of great khutbus and Sahabatul Rasul. And what he did at that time was, before he was 40, because I want to come to a Hasaid which he written, because my brother Fallou also told you that Islam is in the hand of Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba. So he himself has written a Hasaid, where he was actually proving that during the time where he was in the CE side. So before he started the contract, before he was 40, all the main books about Islam, about Tasawwuf, about fiqh, and all the main thing that you needed to know in Islam for your deen to be perfect, the Shaykh did actually resuming, because those books used to be like 1,000 pages or even 2,000 pages long. And why it was even harder to memorize is that it was what we call in Nasr. It wasn't actually versified. It was just like a book diary, where you will have you will go to one Hadi or one Sufi. He will tell you one writing about, let's say, doing your wudu. You write it down. You go to the next one. You write it down. So at the end, for you to learn that, it would be hard, because you will not know where which actually law you will have to follow in Islam. So before he was 40 years old, Sheikh Ahmad Bamba did write down all those books, and one of those, the main one, go back. Yeah. So this is what we found out of those books about Islam that he has written: Tazawwud Sihar, Tazawwud Shiban, Nahjul Khadai al-Hajj, Masalik al-Jinan, which is a work of Sanusi, which is actually in how to use your time, it is actually a guideline for every sheikh who wants to know the vices or all the diseases that is inside the heart of the disciples. It was done by Sanusi, but Sheikh Ahmad Bamba did write it down again. We have Munawir Sudur, Mulayin Sudur, Mawa'ib al-Quddus, which is actually also another book about theology, about Allah, about the prophets, about the books, about the Qadr, which is the decree of Allah, and how to believe in them, and how to consider and to make a difference between what is allowed by Allah, what is not allowed to be thought about Allah, and what is actually considered as being a great sin in Islam about Allah or about the Prophet, or even about the books about Islam. The next one also we do have Jawhar Nafis, Sirhul Jawahir, Kun Katiman, Jawab and Jod Sifat Salihin Murid, and Alayka Ya Mukhtar. These also are small versified khasais, which actually tells the murid on how to behave, how to consider his share, and also how to be a murid. Like he said back in Ukhal Bukharu, Tuba li abdin muridin salihin luhumu bi khidmatin aw bi khubbin aw hadiyat. Meaning that before you have to be a murid, first you have to be an abd. An abd meaning a slave of Allah. And for you to know how to be a slave of Allah, you have the book about that. You have the books, you have Mu'ayib al-Quddus, you have Tazawwud Sihar, Tazawwud Shuban. They will all teach you about the main thing you need to know about fiqh, how to do your ibadah, and how to be just a slave of Allah. After that, while Muridism is a bit different from other tariqah that we thought, Shaykh Ahmad Bamba brought back the pact of allegiance that the Sahaba did with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For you to be a murid, you have to have a shaykh. You have to, give yourself to the shaykh to be tarbiyah. That's the sentence, Suba li abdin. Now that you've given yourself, you become a murid. But for Shaykh Ahmad Bamba, what is wonderful about him is that there's no limit. I will not say the sky is a limit. There's no limit with Shaykh Ahmad Bamba. Just being a murid is not enough. You have to move up to the state of Sadiq. And for you to be a Sadiq, you have also the Hasaid that can teach you how to be a murid Sadiq. You have Sifatu Sadiqin and Alayka Ya Mukhtar as well. And now that being the interior thing, how should we know that now you are not abd, you are a murid, and you are sadiq? There are 3 acts that Shaykh Ahmad Bamba has brought us. Tuba li abdin muridin sadihin lahum bi khidmatin, which is the first stage. You have to do a work for the shaykh, or bi hubbin, or a true love for the shaykh, or bi hadiyati. He didn't say wa bi hubbin wa bi hadiyati. If you have one which is sincere and true, it's fine. But if you have all 3 of them, it's even better. So khidmah today, let's say it can be just organizing the magal, going through the retailers, see how they can sell us the fruits and everything that we'll need. That will enter into khidmah of Shaykh Ahmad Bamba. Abi Khubbin is the true love of Shaykh Ahmad Bamba, where you can also find it back internally inside of you. A love which is not tainted by any any love for worldly material or just to be seen as being a Taliban of Sheikh Ahmad Bamba. It has to be a true love. And our hadiyati, as many of us do, at the end of the month we get some of our money, send it to the Sheikh for him to actually build his schools, Islamic schools, and continue the work of Sheikh Ahmad Bamba. So that's the three stages of the murid. Now coming to that, during his exile, we found out back in, there's a small mistake, it shouldn't be 1902, it should be 1907. The French, what they found out was that Sheikh Ahmad Bamba has actually written 7.5 tons of qasids, which are all about the Quran. The way he writes his qasid is that he takes up letters from the Quran, or ayah from the Quran, and make up a qasid from it. So what they found out was that was 7.5 tons. 1 ton can be just 3,500 books. And it was these qasids that elevated Sheikh Ahmad Bamba to the grade of, from the grade of Khutbu back in 1895 to the grade of Sahabatul Badr. And later on in his life, he said that he is as close to the Prophet as were Sayyidina Umar and Sayyidina Abu Bakr. No one has ever heard that before. And it was with his qasid that he's attained this level. So for us murid, what I'm saying, and not even that, before I go on, even in his qasid, he surpassed Hassan, Kahab, and with his volume and acceptance of his qasid, even in that he has surpassed everyone who actually wanted to do the eulogies of the Prophet ﷺ. And still with his qasid and the work he did in the exile, he actually said that he inherited all the will, all the tariqah that was before him, all the ways to accept to go to Allah. Sheikh Ahmad Bamba inherited them, and all these ways are actually resumed inside his qasid. You just have to read it in order to know. And the next slide, I think, is it the last one? Yeah. So for the format of the qasid of Sheikh Ahmad Bamba, this is the qasid that we call وَيَخْلُقُ مَا لَا تَحْلَمُونَ. That's where he's actually, you can learn about the dimension of the Sheikh. For the first part of the qasids, for the first part of the qasid, what he is, you see the letters وَيَخْلُقُ مَا لَا تَحْلَمُونَ. He will take the first letter wa and make one verse from it. The ya, another verse. The ha, another verse. The lam, another verse. That's how he did it until the end. And inside the qasid, why I chose to talk about it is that that's where he's actually saying that he inherited all the previous ways to accept to Allah. So if we just move on, wait. There you go. With the alif lam, he brings up li